welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a sports ethos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle every week. I'm Candace Higgins.
No, I'm Tino Ganasius.
And we are back after another Seahawks win. Super excited to talk about this one. The Seahawks win a tough one on the road, 10 a.m. game. They won that game 23-20 in overtime. It took a lot to happen. I think this game was one of the stranger ones that you watch, but I kind of expected that these games with these, old school type grinded out games tend to kind of go the way of the weird. And that's exactly what happened on yesterday morning. So Geno stood out. I think he's the story of the game by far. Man, 33 of 44, 327 yards, one touchdown, no interceptions, and frankly, that stat line could have been a lot better. Geno was not helped out by his wide receivers, who had at least about 5 drops. Just a tough running game. Geno literally carried this team to the victory. They challenged him to be able to make difficult passes, the New England defense, and that's exactly what he did, quite frankly. So, Tino, what things stood out to you when looking at this game?
Obviously, Geno, 100%. I think the idea, I don't know why I keep going back to the idea that folks thought that maybe there was a QB competition coming into the year, maybe just because Sam Howell was a starter last year. But Geno Smith, I've said this before, when he's given weapons and a little bit of time, can be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, maybe top 8, right? He's super accurate. He makes really great decisions. And I think this was on display. The thing that stood out for me offensively is Seahawks win week 1 because they figured out how to run behind the left side of the line in the second half. We talked about that. Charles Cross was dominant. They said, okay, we're going to run the ball. They established the run. That, to me, offensively is why they won. Week 2, New England in some ways takes away the run. Charbonnet, who we can talk about later, is not K9, right? We know that. And Geno wins through the air. We have 22 catches between DK and JSN. But to me, what stands out, what I walk away with, first of all, offensively, is Seahawks win week 1 on the ground, win week 2 in the air. If this is a diversified offense that can use both air and ground to score points, that's a huge sign, right? That's a huge positive sign. That's a step in the right direction. They're not predictable. They've got ability to win both ways. To me, that's step 1. That's the first thing I think about offensively. The other thing that comes to mind is this team did not look very good in either game, right? There's so many things that can be picked apart, specifically defensively, about this team. And yet the team starts 2-0. One of the games is, as you said, on the East Coast, 10 o'clock start. I just think when you have teams that figure out a way to win and can win ugly and have room for improvement, that's the upside for teams like that historically has been higher, right? They're not, this isn't a team that's playing at its highest potential and squeaking by New England. This is a team that made a ton of mistakes, that has an offensive line that's learning, that defensively had some missed assignments, and yet still won the game. So I'm encouraged. I won't say that I was incredibly impressed by anyone other than Geno Smith in this game, to be honest with you. But the fact that they won ugly and didn't play particularly well is, I think, a very good sign for the future.
Yeah, I would agree on most of those points. I'll say this. For me, the jury is still out a little bit on, can they win both ways? Because in theory, you're correct that they were able to win in 2 different ways in 2 different games, but they struggled to do the other thing in that same game. So I don't really know if we have the confidence to say that they can do it when they have to do it on either side. It's still early in the season, so that's, just to be determined. Obviously, I think things do go better with Kenneth Walker. I think part of this was just sort of part of the struggles, at least on offense, in my opinion. It had a lot to do with some play calling. I'm not gonna say mistakes, but maybe some kinks to work through. I think
Sure.
it basically took them into the third quarter to figure out how to accurately or more effectively
Hmm.
utilize Zach Charbonnet when Ryan Grubb was asked about the potential of Zach Charbonnet starting, he essentially said there's no difference to the way that we're going to play. And I
Hmm.
think he learned, I hope that he learned, or I hope one of his takeaways was
They're
that
different.
yes, if you're going to play Charbonnet, you do need to play differently. They are two very different backs, and as
Mhm.
complementary as they are to one another, I do believe Zach Charbonnet can give you more than what we saw him do against the Patriots, but
Right.
not if you're going to run him out of shotgun all the time. Like you got to get him under center, you got to get him down here. I would say you would deploy him in a similar way that you would a whole like a Derrick Henry, right? We're seeing
Right.
that play out on the Ravens side with like, how you deploy a talented running back matters. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it's Derrick Henry or if it's Zach Charbonnet.
Right.
They were able to get it figured out there, in that fourth quarter, especially. And you saw Zach Charbonnet be able to make a difference and make some effective plays when they needed him most. And so you have to love that aspect of it at least. So, like you said, plenty of kinks, plenty of things to work through, I think, on both sides of the ball. But you love that they're finding ways to get the win anyway.
Hmm.
I think this win was based on the back of talent, frankly, just the difference in talent between the Seahawks and where the New England Patriots are. Because I think these were two really well coached teams.
Sure.
I think they were both disciplined. I think they both, showed that toughness and they kind of want to play the same type of ball. I think that was
Mhm.
evident in how weird the game was. Um, but yeah, that sort of stands out to me. And we going in on paper, right? We wrote this down as 2-0, but the Patriots ended up being a little bit more formidable of
Right.
a team than we anticipated. So, I would have been okay with a loss, frankly, just based on how things were playing out. I
Mhm.
would have lumped it up to some some errors on coaching, some adjustments needing to be made sooner.
Sure. The
Hunter
travel,
Henry,
right? You got the
yeah,
travel. You've got all sorts of.
exactly. Hunter
Mhm.
Henry was absolutely a detriment in that first half.
Talk
I just
about that too.
Yeah, I would have chalked it up to that. But man, you just love a team um, that it seems like when it matters the most, they play the best.
Right.
And I'm not sure there's a better indictment of, or not indictment, but a better sign of
Mhm.
a quality coach than that. I
Yep.
think getting your players to execute best when it matters most is absolutely the name of the game, and it shows itself in tangible wins and losses.
Yep. I agree completely. I just looked up so one thing that stood out when I saw the lineups was just off the top of my head. I knew once I saw the names how big their linebackers are, right? They believe in stopping the run. That's a New England thing. That's a Gerard Mayo thing. Anthony Jennings, 6'2", 255. Juwan Bentley, 6'2", 250. Jelani Tavai, 6'2", 255. They've got big, stout linebackers that are going to stop the run, right? And some of their issues come sometimes trying to stop the short game and some of the, like the Seahawks had last year, trying to stop running backs out of the backfield, catching passes, that sort of thing, because you've got these big kind of linebackers from a different time. But
Right.
that can also contribute to the inability of the Seahawks to be able to run the ball is
Yeah.
that the Patriots just believe in stopping the run. And that's even when they go down to two linebackers, they still have two big dudes, right, in the middle. So I think that's part of it too. I don't expect the Seahawks to be able to really run anybody over consistently, not with the lack of quality in the interior of the line. I don't expect that. But I think you're right. The Patriots they surprised me in that, you know, they were tough and disciplined and they took on that's who Gerard Mayo was as a player, right? They took on some of his characteristics along with what was already there. And I do think it is a formidable foe. You're not going to go into New England and just, kind of waltz all over the Patriots. They're going to make you earn it. There is a talent gap. You look at their wide receivers, right? They don't match up. The quarterback obviously there's a huge difference in Geno Smith and Jacoby Brissett. But if Drake May gets better, if they can add some more talent, this is a pretty good team. So I think the Seahawks should be proud of. Then you got Christian Gonzalez and Kyle Duggar, two really, really good secondary players. So you add Christian Barmore back next year. You infuse some more talent with the high draft pick. Um, this is a good team. So the Seahawks should be proud. And I think you're right, too. They play with discipline and toughness and a sense of urgency when it's important. And that comes from the coaching staff. That is very much who Mike McDonald is trying to be. And I think that showed in this particular game. This is the kind of game where previous Seahawks teams, it was a coin flip, right? Sometimes they lost them, sometimes they won them. And you had confidence with Russell Wilson that they would pull it out in games like this. But we didn't have that confidence for the last couple of years.
Right.
And this game, they found a way to win.
To your point, there was I think maybe early in the third quarter or maybe kind of middle way through, because really after that, they started off in the third quarter, you felt okay. After that first drive, felt pretty good. And then defense came, and all of a sudden, they just started getting absolutely run over in the run game and really began to get, frankly, dominated. I mean, just the gaps of holes that were running. I mean, it felt like a repeat of last year. And then, I'm sort of feeling like, oh, here we go again. These same issues that we think are getting fixed don't seem to be that. And this team was able to stop the bleeding. And I think, honestly, if we're being realistic about the past couple of years, I think that's a loss. I don't think that it's a win, because I don't think that the coaching staff makes the adjustments needed to change things. So I think the adjustments on how you saw this game plan when they started, and I guess we could start off talking about the defense and then in on the offense. When they started off playing this game defensively, you could tell they were throwing all kind of blitzes at Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby, to his credit, was taking advantage of him. He was staying patient. I mean, they had him dead to rights a couple of times. So it's not like those blitzes weren't working. They were getting there, but they just couldn't finish. Like, they were getting home without finishing. And so Jacoby made them pay. Ultimately, that ended up costing them quite a bit. So I think they spent a lot of that first quarter just trying to figure out how to, readjust. Are we just going to rush for, just play sound? How they're going to do what,
Cover the tight end?
Yeah, cover the tight end. They couldn't do that out the whole first half. Like, the first half, Hunter Henry was just, I mean, he had like 99 yards, I think, at halftime.
I think the first 4 or 5 catches he had were for first downs.
Yeah.
And he was basically just leaking out of the, out of the blocking scheme a little bit and just making himself open. And I guess the adjustment to that is that you needed. Here's the problem. One of the issues with the strong safeties, though, is they don't cover all that well, right? Rayshawn Jenkins is not a coverage safety, at least from what I see. Maybe Kayvon Wallace is a little more. And certainly the linebackers aren't necessarily. I guess Dotson and Baker can, but they weren't. Either they had a different assignment or they just were losing track of him. It was bad. I was screaming at the TV because I'm like, Brissett's going to be able to scramble a little bit and be able to figure out his way out of pressure. But boy, that Henry was just killing us. He was on the little rinky-dink passes too.
Yeah, I would say that Baker had a rough game. I think I haven't gone back and been able to watch the film like I wanted to, but I think just on first eye approach, looked like Baker was struggling. Looked like Byron Murphy also was sort of struggling to anchor down, especially against, a formidable physical team.
Sure.
Not that Denver is, well, there's a difference. There's a difference. And I think that you saw that adjustment on his part. One of the adjustments that I've heard talked about and sort of referenced in these press conferences that I've been listening on the aftermath is that they decided to put Julian Love on Hunter Henry, just kind of almost shadowing him as such, maybe not shadowing is the right term, but just, singled him up against and made that his assignment. And that's really how they shut down Hunter Henry, was by doing that.
Yep.
But otherwise, yeah, and I think that's a big adjustment, because otherwise I think there's no question the Patriots win this game.
Right. And honestly, that's literally the kind of adjustment that you would not have seen
Right.
from Pete Carroll. He would have
Yeah.
continued to believe in the scheme. He would have continued to play, 5 years ago, it would have been cover three. It's different, his last couple of years, but it would have been the same thing, believing in the scheme, believing in what you taught, and not making the adjustment and just getting fried. And I think that adjustment is in and of itself is a huge deal. That they're willing to pull your center fielder, your free safety, and use him in a different capacity in order to shut down what it was that New England was doing. I think I think what we're seeing is in 2 weeks is that these are really smart coaches, and they're not coaches who believe that they know it all, right? They're coming
Right.
into it with an open mind. There's a philosophy and there's a way of playing, but they're coming into it knowing they're going to have to make adjustments and knowing that they can't just do the same thing over and over again. And that in and of itself is really refreshing to me, given where we were this time last year.
Yeah, I would agree. And we'll talk about the offense later, but I think that's true on both sides of the ball. But
Mhm.
I just want to shout out Julian Love, who is not the flashiest player, who doesn't get a lot of love, but I believe is still ranked number two among safeties in the NFL right now. Did a fantastic job of shutting Hunter Henry down in the second half, and also blocked the field goal that would have put the Patriots up and potentially put that game away. And so
Yeah.
really, while Geno Smith will get deservedly a ton of praise, I
Mhm.
think Julian Love had a big role in that defensive turnaround. With that within, a safety can only do so much, right? But like I think he's going above and beyond what just a normal safety would do and impacting the game. It's really ironic that now that we now that we have reduced our amount of spending on the safety position, we are now seeing a much more profound impact
Mhm.
on the safety in this game. You're actually seeing what Pete Carroll believes being executed on the field now with Mike McDonald's team.
Right. I think I saw that Boye Mafe has the second most pressures
Yes,
in the NFL, and that Leonard
Aiden Hudson.
Williams has the most for an interior defensive lineman in the NFL.
Yes, he does.
Um, and I think both of those surprised me. I believe in Mafe's talent, and I think I was worried about him having the opportunities, given that on paper at least Draymond Jones was starting and he wasn't. But man, Mafe is he looks like he's taken another step to me, right? And that type of athleticism and power that he plays with is overwhelming for an offense. He's really stood out to me in these first two games. And Leonard Williams, I don't know if it's that he's just happy here or part of it is scheme, but he's always had this talent, and it's not really shown in the way that it has these first two games. And if they can continue to get pressure like that on the quarterback, given it's New England and Denver and two kind of bottom tier quarterbacks, but still, I'm those are the things with defensively that really stand out to me is that these guys are showing up and they're getting after the quarterback. And again, I think part of it is certainly scheme. That's what Mike McDonald is in part known for. But you got to have talent too to be able to do it. And Mafe in particular is a beast and really standing out to me each and every game.
Yeah, you want to see him convert some of those opportunities to sacks, but I
Mhm.
think if he can, I mean, at the rate with which he is pressuring the quarterback, if that stays consistent, and I'm always bigger on pressures than sacks. So I want him to get the sacks just so he can get the notoriety that I think he is beginning to truly deserve, being up there with the elitist of the elite.
Mhm.
But more than anything, like he's becoming a guy you've got the game plan for. And I
Yep.
think that is huge for this team. He, along with Leonard Williams, I think Leonard Williams, frankly, was just on a bunch of bad teams.
Right.
So I think it's probably the best situation that he's been in, like in terms of what's around him. And then with Boye, you know that he can get those sacks, right? So like as much as you love for him to get that, you saw him get 9.5,
Right.
last season, and I don't think that that was a fluke. He seems to be building on that with the rate that he's getting the pressures. He does. Mike McDonald made a good point about there not being a lot of opportunities to get to the quarterback in the offseason. In fact, really never
Right.
are you allowed to truly do that. So it's probably just a bit of a learning curve for him. But I mean, I think you're right. If he can convert just a couple of these extra pressures to actual sacks, he is going to be just a monster. And
He Pro Bowl
if
player,
he
he's
stays
potentially a
consistent,
Pro Bowl
he'll be a
player.
rising star.
And I do think too that they have an impact on one another. And as Byron Murphy grows into his role, Mafe
Yeah,
is going to push the quarterback forward into the middle of the line, right? Which is
right.
going to create opportunities for the D tackles and vice versa. The D tackles putting pressure on the quarterback is going to force the quarterback to roll, and likely they're going to probably roll away from Mafe's side if they're smart, right? And so it's going to create opportunities, I think, for everyone. The more pressure any of these guys individually can get. And it's refreshing. I know the Seahawks had a good number of sacks over the years, but
Yeah,
this feels like more consistent pressure, right? This feels
yeah,
like caving the pocket and creating negative plays for the offense. This is the defense dictating to the offense what they're going to do, as opposed to, I think, a lot of times with Pete, and I'm not trying to trash Pete, but I think they were individual wins that created some of these sacks. You had Daryl Taylor beating somebody off the edge and
right.
running them down, as opposed to the scheme helping to create that much more pressure. It's encouraging, and we haven't even talked, about like the corner play and how solid, even though Jerome Baker didn't have a good game, there's no one is standing out as like a having a terrible game. I think they're all playing pretty solid. And that's not something that we had in previous years either. You'd have one or two guys missing assignments, and that was the game. And now I think they're playing together more. It's hugely positive, and I don't want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I think this is what we expected from Coach McDonald. This
Right,
is what we thought the defense was going to do.
right.
So I think, at least me personally, I'll admit that I'm kind of looking for it, but they've exceeded those expectations. Not only have they been assignment sound for the most part, but they're also um, taking another step, right? Maffe's taking another step. Leonard Williams is taking another step. I think Tariq Woolen is taking another step from last year and playing better now. So, yeah, defense looks phenomenal.
And what's funny is we're talking about how good the defense looks, and frankly, they played pretty poorly.
They did. You're right.
They
They did.
played pretty poorly, but there are just some bright spots, and that's really what we're focusing on is the bright spots because I think there were some quirks to this game. I think there were some, I think Hunter Henry, getting all those yards. Frankly, I mean, they adjusted to that. I mean, you did what you wanted them to do. They adjusted to the run game.
Right.
And even though they did get run over, they made the stops when they needed. Now, is that going to be an ongoing problem? I'm not sure. I do recall that the run game was a little bit of a problem at the end of Mike McDonald's tenure with the Ravens. Being able to stop the run was a little bit problematic. And I don't know if we will have answers to that or not. To be determined.
Right.
But my goal is you just want to be good enough at stopping the run that people aren't interested in like passing. Like you don't want to it's really better and more effective in today's NFL to
Right.
be able to stop the pass. Stopping the run is important, but you could still be a good defense if you can just be respectable in
Right.
that regard. If we can get them to respectable in that regard, and then they're elite, especially with these corners in the passing game, then I think you got something there.
Right.
Do you want to shout out?
If Go ahead.
Oh no. Well, I was go
I
ahead
was
if
going
you.
to say that if 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 you can make a team one dimensional and make them pass, you've got the corners to defend the pass. Obviously, you've got the free
Right.
safety to be able to play deep safety. But the other thing is, you've got the pass rushers. If it's third and long, you've got the pass rushers to be able to pin their ears back and really put pressure on the quarterback. And
Yep.
so I think you're right that you have to be serviceable in terms of run defense. You don't have to be a lockdown run defense. And times are different, but you have to be able to, you play you have to be able to contain the Niners, right? You can't
Right.
let the Niners run all over you like they did before. I think
Right.
this Miami game is going to be super interesting because no Tua, right? Devon A. Chain is maybe the most dynamic running back in football, and it's a team that is built to be able to run the ball in the perimeter in many ways, right? And it's going to be really interesting to me to see if specifically the linebackers and the safeties can keep up with the speed of the Dolphins and shut down the running game, knowing that they're likely going to be running the ball a ton because Tagovailoa is out. But I think this is a good test, and it's a good way to kind of think about what we just said about stopping the run because it is such a run. Despite the presence of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, this is a team that's predicated on running the ball outside with speed.
Yeah, to your point, Mafe did get injured
Mm-hmm.
to end the last game with a knee contusion.
Mm-hmm.
Mike McDonald made it clear he's not going to give us anything on injuries. It's not on an injury report. So that's something to watch because I would be very concerned about Miami running roughshod on the Seahawks if there's no Boye Mafe to set that edge. Draymond Jones struggled to do
Mm-hmm.
that last game. In fact, he was one of the reasons why they had some explosive run plays when Mafe did go out. So just a bit of a concern there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Early, but also another concern. Baker went out with an injury, as well as he did struggle with the run. I do think he did some. I mean, he did some really, quite frankly, he did something I haven't seen in years, and that's cover pretty well in space and to prevent a touchdown.
Right.
That was fun to see. But also Tyrese Knight has done well. I think he's still gonna miss some plays. I think sometimes he's still guessing, but linebacker guru, Knight being able to be serviceable with the tape he put in college is such a gigantic jump from what I thought he projected as. But I just think it goes to show that, I mean, Mike does really know how to put these players in position because even if you look at the box score now, Rayshawn Jenkins had 9 tackles basically by playing the Julian Love role, who had like what 10 tackles or something like that. Last game, I mean, I think he had maybe he had 12.
Last game, I think he had 12, maybe
Yeah, I think he had 12.
something like that.
But for him sort of playing that Julian Love role basically in the second half, um, I think that the way that Mike puts these players in position, it
Mm-hmm.
really sort of, I'm not gonna say completely plug and play because you do have to be versatile. And I think they look for certain players that would, do well. So it's not anybody would work in
Mm-hmm.
this scheme.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got players that have that versatility, you can do well. And so I'm interested to see that's something to watch for as well. I would prefer to have Baker in just because of an experience. Also, it's his former team, so he's really familiar with those guys. That'll be something that's key to watch. If not, it will be a really big test for Tyrese Knight because those backers do have speed. The wideouts have speed everywhere, right? Even though Tua should not be playing, right? I'm hoping that we're not seeing Tua
He
in
won't.
week 3. I sure hope not, but I
We
did.
may not ever see Tua, honestly, after
That's
the history. Um,
That should be the case, Tino. I agree with you, but Mike
mhm.
McDonald was just quoted. He was asked about whether they were going to put Tua on IR, and they said that's not something that's basically on the radar right now. He said he's doing well today, and they are taking it day by day.
So I
Day
just got
by day is not exactly how I would describe Tua's situation, frankly. So
right. I got to interrupt real quick.
yeah.
This is so cool. So I've got a buddy from South Seattle who I've been friends with for I guess 14 years or so.
Mhm.
But since I moved, I haven't seen him a ton. And we used to go to Hawks games together. But I probably haven't talked to him at length for I don't know 5 6 years now.
Mhm.
And I just got a text from him that said, "Where's my week 2 breakdown?" Because he said, that means that, and I haven't even said to him, talked about the podcast to him at all. But that means that he listens to it and he's waiting for it. I thought I'd add
Shout
that
out.
just because I think that's super cool, and
That is
it's
cool.
cool how people can stay connected through something like this. So, side note, I don't want to derail us completely, but
Yeah,
I just feel
that's
like that
cool.
was a cool thing to add. Shout out Jason Hoff for listening to the podcast. I appreciate
Shout
it.
out, Jason.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So,
Appreciate your
yeah.
listening. Always grateful for that. Yeah, we always got time to shout out listeners for sure, especially when they are friends.
Hmm.
Um, all right, cool stuff. So, anything else on defense that sticks out to you? I think a lot of people will cover their struggles. To me, uh, what matters more is overcoming them
Mhm.
than had they not. Uh,
Yes,
Even if
I
they had
think
lost, I think I still would feel good about the adjustments they made, and I would just say they made them too late.
right. I would say that the fact that there's progress, that's what I'm looking for. Week to week on both sides of the ball, it's about getting better and making progress. I didn't expect them to be great out of the gates because it's a new coach, new schemes, new everything, right? The fact that I you can see a positive light at the end of the tunnel. The fact that you see elevated performance from players who have been here for a number of years. I think all those things are really positive signs. Um, and I think the fact that we're not talking about the corners much says, now, granted, again, we faced Bo Nix and Jacoby Brissett, but we're not talking about the corners. And that's when corners are playing well, when you're not talking about them, right? It means they're doing their
Yeah,
job and not getting burnt, basically.
right.
And so I think there are a lot of positives defensively. And as I said previously, I think this is a top 10 defense
Mhm.
down the road. And the building blocks, you're starting to see that the building blocks are there, right? All three levels are contributing. All three levels seem to be on solid ground. And now it's just up to the stars to really start to elevate their games. And I think we will start to see that moving forward. So to me, I don't know. I have a lot of faith in this defense. It's really fun to watch. They're playing with passion. They're playing with energy. I do hope to see more of Witherspoon in the Kyle Hamilton role. I think that as the year goes on, we'll start to see Witherspoon put in more positions to really attack defensively. And I'm excited to see a lot of that. But this is just the aggression that they're playing with, them being, for the most part, assignment sound. Like you said, linebackers that can freaking cover. That's These are some steps in the right direction for me. I really enjoy watching this defense play.
Yeah. Now, I'll say a couple more points to your point about the stars stepping up. I think that was the main issue with the Seahawks is that there weren't a ton of blue chip talent, and you were hoping that Mike McDonald could elevate some
Mm-hmm.
players to become blue chip talent players. And I believe it's early, it's 2 weeks in, so we don't know what's truly yet. But you're hoping that some of the things and the trends that are beginning to happen are leading to some players standing out, becoming that blue chip because this team had solid depth. And
Mm-hmm.
I think to your point about not having anybody stand out, there's not any players on defense that you can just call out for poor play. Even Byron Murphy, who struggled with the run, did a great job when it came to pressuring the quarterback and still being disruptive and doing what you drafted him to do as
Mm-hmm.
a rookie. And
Mm-hmm.
so and then to your points about Devin Witherspoon. Now, I actually think that they are using him as an attack mode player. Like, I was really impressed with that. Just him lined up in alignment against the wide receiver and then just randomly, so in my mind, just randomly taking off, get to the QB. I mean, blitzing Reek Woolen
Right.
and Devin Witherspoon. I think they are doing some of that. I don't think they want to unveil their entire,
Right.
playbook, but I think you're seeing enough that I'm not, I think that's kind of playing itself out. So I'm pretty pleased with that. But enough about the defense, who did ultimately struggle overall. I think we still some room to grow from there, but I'm still pleased with what I'm seeing relative to really how I'm comparing them last year, because that's really
Right.
all I have to go on. But this offense was what I expected to see week one. Frankly,
Mm-hmm.
well, this offense was explosive. Right, when you get all the quotes from the players about how they would describe this offense, how they describe Ryan Grubb, you heard all the words explosive and this and that, and I'm watching them in week one, and I'm going, I know the O line is a factor here.
Right.
Like I don't see it. I
Right.
don't see it. And DK Metcalf, 10 receptions, 129 yards, touchdown, and he had two drops. So Jackson Smith and Jigba have 12 receptions. 12.
Hmm.
receptions. It's very nice. 117 yards, career game for him. You really saw him be the guy that everyone expected when he was drafted. He was used all over the field in different ways and he excelled. He had a drop too that was pivotal, but overall, great game from him. Um, man, you just saw Geno willing and dealing.
Yep.
Noah Fant could have been a contributor, and I'm disappointed with Noah Fant to this point.
Hmm.
I had some high hopes with him. I mean, he did have one reception for 14 yards, but he could have had so much more than that. Just from a tight end performance perspective, there was more to gain.
Hmm.
Uh, Tyler Lockett was himself had clutch catches. He was sort of the third man on the totem pole, which is what we again expected
Right.
preseason. We expected to see that, and it manifested itself with him just being that go-to clutch guy when you absolutely got to have it and you need it the most, especially considering the wide receivers that day were struggling to, you know, catch the ball.
Hmm.
Which is insane. Like I just said, again, right, reading off those stats and saying that they still left a ton of meat on the bone in multiple facets and multiple ways, not even just with their wideouts, but just sort of like we talked about earlier with your running game. You felt like there was a lot more to have there from, yes, a blocking perspective, but also just from a calling and playing into your personnel perspective. I
Hmm.
think, you could have gotten Charbonnet more involved in the running game. I was a little bit more surprised that they didn't use LaVisca Chenault more.
Hmm.
Do know that things were going well with DK and Jackson, but just knowing how much of a running game this was going to be and not having K9, I'm surprised we didn't see anything from him. No jet, not a ton of jet sweeps or anything like that. I was a little disappointed in that, so I left. I thought meat was left on the bone in that way. And then you didn't use Kenny McIntosh at all,
Nope.
or George Talani.
Nope.
None. I mean, Kenny got 3 snaps apparently. He must have been invisible because I don't know. I can't recall a single time seeing him out on that field.
Right.
They did not use him. It was basically like they didn't have a third running back, which is strange because I thought that battle went really well between George Halani and Kenny McIntosh. They didn't trust him at all. I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, all of those things being said, and your offense still had an incredible day. Um,
Hmm. The performance again, Geno Smith was a magician, right?
yeah,
And was just dealing. And what's crazy is I'm looking at the numbers right now. 30 of the 44 targets went to Metcalf and JSN.
yeah,
30 of 44. So DK had 14 targets, JSN has 16. And I've always wanted them to target DK over and over again. I just think that good things happen. Even if he's just a threat and other teams know DK is going to get thrown too deep, it loosens everything else up, right? And JSN is he's the epitome of a technician, like a route running wide receiver technician. His
mhm,
routes, his ability to get in and out of cuts, his hands, he's really valuable. And I think a perfect complement, honestly, to a player like Metcalf. I just think you've got the beast on the outside, the physical specimen, you've got the technician in the middle. Um, Lockett is going to, I'm sure Lockett will play a big role at some point if teams are trying to take away one of DK or JSN. But in this game, they were just, those two were dynamite. And, I watched Charbonnet at Michigan when he was a freshman. Watched him a little bit at UCLA. He does. You're absolutely right. He needs to get downhill, right? He's a big back of a different era. I always think of like Christian Okoye on the Chiefs or Barry Word when they had the two of them. You're not handing the ball to those guys out of the gun because
yeah,
they have no momentum, right? They have
right,
no momentum. They're not getting downhill. Charbonnet has to be, you have to hand the ball, whether it's one back or two backs, you need to kind of be under center to get the most out of him, right? I also think they could have, I know he had 5 receptions, but I think they could have utilized him a little more in the passing game, given the size and the lack of mobility with the linebackers
yeah,
for New England. But all in all, again, they figured out how to move the ball. They figured out, okay, we're not going to be able to run the ball 2.4 yards a carry. We're not really going to be able to run the ball against this New England team. Linebackers and D line are too stout. but they figured out a way to pass, and they figured out a way to pick on Christian Gonzalez, who is, probably a top 10 corner in football already, year two. And that was also cool to see. I think, DK's long pass was on a missed assignment or kind of confusion with the New England secondary, but there were times when in previous Seahawks years, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Miss them, that sort of thing. So you still have to be able to execute in order to score on a play like that. But it's just refreshing, both sides of the ball. That's kind of where I land attitude wise and perspective wise on this team in these first 2 weeks. Both sides of the ball is refreshing. They're making adjustments. They're utilizing the talent they have. This looked honestly, a lot like University of Washington last year.
Right.
You have two of the three receivers going off. It was Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze. It was always Odunze plus one, right? You have the quarterback spraying the ball around to those two or three guys, and the tight ends and the running backs not getting much. Running game was hit and miss, hot and cold, but you always knew they were going to score, and you always knew they were going to move the ball. And that's kind of what this team is. I'll end with this. Geno is so vastly underrated to me. And I know, on the Athletic Football Show, they praise Geno and they say Geno is a lot better than anybody gives him credit for, and pick apart his games. But he's so calm. He takes care of the ball. He's incredibly accurate. He makes a lot of really, really great decisions, and he's playing under duress. Let's not get it twisted. If the other four linemen outside of Charles Cross are, well, Connor Williams is holding up okay, but the guards are boo-boo, and the right tackle is extra boo-boo, right? Like this is not a good offensive line right now. And I think that you have to give him all the credit in the world for being able to remain confident, get the ball to the receivers, and then the play calling to be able to call the right plays, knowing that offensive line has so many holes, right? Again, my enthusiasm or the energy in my voice is coming from this idea that we have a coaching staff that's making adjustments, that believes in putting its players in a position to succeed, not just plugging a system in and hoping that those players play to the system. It's pretty fun to watch. And I think this team realistically is 3-0 after 3 weeks, which is really crazy to say.
Yeah, but we'll see how they handle Miami, because I can see it being I can see it being a trap game, if you will. I can see that. But you brought up the offensive line. Talk about it. It's really problematic when the guards make Stone Forsythe look good, because he wasn't the problem.
Right.
Last game, which is, like you said, that's wild to say, but he wasn't actually the problem. Anthony Bradford.
Whew.
And
Laken Tomlinson.
Lincoln is rough to start games, man. I mean, he seems to kind of settle down and not be as noticeable as the game progresses sometimes, but
he got blown.
He always has at least two embarrassing, how do you let that guy flip you like that plays?
I don't know who it was, what D tackle it was on the Patriots, but someone blew by him. So cold. And he was chasing it. It was literally a quarter of a second after the ball was snapped, and he's already chasing the dude towards Geno.
Yep.
And what's funny is every time I see that happen, I think of you every single time, because you were not about signing him. You were about signing him, but not as a starter.
No, not a starter. He's quality depth.
It was, I don't know, it was probably, like I said, it's probably the first or second series of the game, and he was just, you saw 70 on his back running towards Geno, and that is not a good sign. Yeah, and Bradford looked like trash too.
Bradford gives me, I know that it's different positions, but Jermaine Ifedi, it brings back the same emotions of he does enough good moments to keep himself on the field, but his mistakes are so costly. And there's not anything else like it that I can describe it other than the Jermaine Ifedi experience, because his mistakes were costly, and he didn't make them all. I mean, there were, I guess, 3 or 4 plays, right, that ultimately ended up being costly in the game, but those things impacted the outcome strongly one way or the other, and he was probably decent. in between those plays, which is what Bradford is, but it's just not enough sometimes to make up for the just egregious five penalties, I think, in 3 games, in 2 games, I'm sorry, at this point.
Right.
It's frankly absurd. Really, it is.
I
For a
would
guy who's not
say,
a rookie.
right. I would say that if, to me, he's a Pete Carroll player in that he's big, he's strong, he's physical, right? If you're trying to run the ball and you're trying to play with power, and that's the identity of your offense, and I could see him being a serviceable starting guard
Not
because
really.
you're
He
playing with.
struggled. He struggled yesterday.
No,
He
I'm
couldn't
saying
even
just,
get the
but
run game
yes,
well.
but I'm saying overall, if I look at who he is as a player and his talent coming in and what I think he could be down the road, he's never going to be a good pass blocker. I'm
No.
saying that I could see him developing into a good run blocker who has some value. That's why he's there. That's why he's playing, right? That's why they wanted him in the first place. My point is that's not who this team is anymore. They want to establish the run, yes, but it's not this road grading type of run game necessarily. They're not, it's, I would like to see them play Christian Haynes because I think at least Haynes has the upside to be able to do both pass and run blocking. I want them to see more versatile type players on that line. I think that's why Charles Cross is valuable. I also think that's why Abe Lucas, if he comes back in 2028, will be valuable, right? Because he'll be able to do to both pass block and run block. But I think this offense is diverse, and they want diverse. They want offensive linemen with a diversity of abilities, and I don't think that's who Anthony Bradford is. That's the point that I was trying to make.
I agree with you on paper, but my biggest problem with Anthony Bradford is the inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that you can count on him to be elite at even what he's supposed to be good at.
Right. I
Right?
agree.
Because he's just not consistent enough on a snap to snap basis to even hang your hat on that, right? Because if you could hang your hat on that, then they would have just run up his side and
Right.
Zach Charbonnet would have got some holes there.
Think about what this offense would look like if you had two good guards.
No, be incredible.
If you had two good
Decent?
guards and you could run the ball, like you could run the ball consistently with either Charbonnet or Walker, and you could alternate the two. And obviously, you'd still be throwing the ball a ton, but even like average guards, league average guards who don't make mistakes but aren't spectacular, but do their job, right? Think about how good this offense could be. I hope that they target that either in the offseason or at the trade deadline, to be able to strengthen it, or we see Haynes, or the dude out of Utah step up a little bit and be able to play more. But that was scary. Those first couple of drives where you saw both guards just screwing up left and right, to me, that could have been the undoing of the Seahawks in this game. Just those two players alone. It was bad, like bad, bad.
And continue to shout out to Grubb, who does seem to be able to adjust to his players. But
Mhm.
to my point about Anthony Bradford, you know, he had a really good running game. He was very good in the run game against Denver. Well, this week he had a better pass blocking grade than he had a run blocking grade, and that's my problem with Anthony Bradford is that if he was good at the one thing, then you could scheme around that, but he's
Sure.
too consistent in both areas
Right.
to be relied on in any regard. So I agree with you. I really would like to see Haynes. It seems like they're going to continue to rotate him in, and I truly have no doubt, no question that you're going to see some serious investment in the offensive line. Not only, I mean, if they can pull it off a trade deadline, I think they will. I don't know if they can though. I don't know if teams are giving away those dudes, but in the offseason, certainly. You can just hear it in Mike McDonald's tone that he's just not pleased with what he's seeing. When he's asked about it in the press, I just watched his presser not that long ago. And he's like, we got to be able to move some dudes. And we're just not doing that. We're just not penetrating at the point of attack, is what he said. He referenced that in another presser, that language. And so he's been upfront about it. He's being direct. He's not happy with what he's seeing. And I think they're going to work to chase that if they can. But the reality is, from what I can understand, offensive line play seems to be pretty poor across the board this year. I don't know there are a ton of quality offensive lines, especially early this year, that have just shown themselves to be true. Um, and I think that's something to continue to watch for as a trend throughout the league because, sometimes I'm a little surprised when I look at these PFF scores, for some of these guards. I mean, Lincoln Tomlinson having a 56.9 is frankly a surprise to me. That's not a good grade. I'm not pretending like it is. It's a below average grade, but like I would have thought it would have been like a 30, you know? And I guess that's just a testament to Grubb and Geno being able to adjust to their circumstances as best as they can to
Right.
still make these guys look somewhat serviceable. But yeah, no question about it. I just think the college game has sort of probably done a disservice in terms of offensive line play. I just think we've seen a huge drop off, just
One
all
hundred
across the
percent.
board. Across
100%.
the
I think
board.
it's why you see that's why you see so many offensive linemen drafted from these pro style programs.
Yeah,
Alabama, Michigan, it's the programs that run the ball and aren't
yeah,
playing the spread, right? You play in the spread, it's completely different than having your hand in the dirt, having to play in a balanced offense. I
yep,
think, yeah, I think it's doing him a disservice. I also think it places a premium, truly places a premium on good, skilled, talented, consistent offensive line play and offensive line men, because they're so hard to find at this point in time.
yeah, yeah, most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wanted to talk about some underrated storylines, since this is Seahawks 360. A couple of come to mind. One of which is the struggle that has been the tight ends. I think that room continues to disappoint me. No one stepped up, and I had high expectations in Noah Fant, and he seems to continue to struggle, not taking advantage of opportunities. And frankly, I think that you don't need to get him a ton of targets. I think he's a guy that can get stacked with yards after catch, and I think that Grubb is putting him in the position to do just that. We saw
Right.
him drop a ball that could have cost the game. He would have been able to maybe not house it, right? But that was a big chunk play
Right.
before. But he wanted to run before he caught the ball. I mean, that's really a young guy mistake. I mean, you got to be more sure-handed than that. And that's normally not been an issue with Noah Fant. I know he's playing through some injury.
Right.
I understand that. It shouldn't affect your hands. So I don't expect him to have lightning speed. I don't expect him to be effective at blocking.
Sure.
I think, you could probably see that he might take a step back in that regard. Completely understand that if he's playing, because I think he is playing through some injury.
Sure.
But you gotta have sure hands, man. Like that's your come on. You're only
Well,
gonna get like 5 targets tops. Like
also, if
that's
he's
your job.
not right, and if he's not going to be a big receiving threat, right? If he's either A, not going to be able to catch the ball, or B, not attract enough attention to be threatening to the defense, put give me some blocking, right? Because he's not the greatest blocker in the world. And I don't know that he's serving the purpose that he's supposed to be. So kind of that Anthony Bradford argument where if you're not going to do the thing that you're supposed to be doing well,
Yeah.
you have some deficiencies. Let's get someone in there who does do something well, right? I haven't, and I don't know whether it is scheme or Fant or injuries or what it is, but he has not looked. He hasn't even looked like the tight ends at UW under Grubb, right? He's just not a threat at all.
No.
And again, if he's not going to catch the ball and be a threat downfield, down the seam, give me a blocker. Give me some AJ Barner. Give me some Farrell Brown, right? Even Brady Russell a little bit, just to be able to blow the other team off the line. Put the tight end on the right side of the line. Have them pair up with whatever stiff we're putting over there at right tackle, and let's open some holes. I think that Noah Fant has not been impressive to me whatsoever so far this year. None of the
But
time.
But the blocking tight ends aren't doing a great job at
They're
blocking.
not. They're
So
not.
AJ Barner, it's PFF. I have not matched this up with the film, but it sort of just, I test based on what I saw in the initial broadcast view. AJ Barner graded out 50 run blocking grade, 29 pass block grade.
Mm-hmm.
Brady Russell, run blocking grade, 49. So like Noah Fan actually had the best pass run blocking grade at
Mm-hmm.
51. And then actually the best pass blocking grade at 30. I mean, that's just sad. So
Right.
like that's what I mean about the tight ends rooms, the tight end room being, you know, such a such a poor place. I think,
Well, I
it's
think
something they can do about it.
Brady Russell isn't. He's not a player that's on the roster to me. And I know they kept him. but I could do without him. I don't know that he's going to be a player that's going to contribute to this team much. I did expect Barner to be a better run blocker out the gate, and I think the Seahawks did too.
Yeah.
Um, I think he did have a pretty decent game that first game, but he's got to be he's the pick that they spent on him and the roster spot. They need him to be able to at minimum run block now, right? The pass catching down the road, that's fine. We'll figure that out, but at least be able to block in the run game, and we haven't seen a ton of that from him yet.
No, and he got the costly penalty. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So tough spot on him. I think it was a holding call or something that he got called on him. So that's just something that no one's talking about that I'm monitoring just
Mhm.
because, it's a long season.
Right.
And as teams, they get better, they adjust, they figure out what you're doing.
Mhm.
Some team might figure out how to take away our wide receivers, or we might
Right.
not have all three healthy, which also happens in the
Right.
NFL season. And you're going to need a tight end to step up. And I'm just concerned that right now, if something like that happened, you'd be screwed,
Right.
frankly.
Right.
Until somebody proves to me otherwise, that's something that I'm continuing to watch. And another thing that I am closely monitoring now, your guy, Charles Cross.
That's a
Shout out to
PFF
him.
grade. I already know where you're going. That's just a PFF grade. I'm not even tripping. He looked
What do
fine
you
to
mean?
me. I thought you were gonna criticize him. I'm being defensive
No,
about my boy.
no. I was gonna say how great he's been playing.
I'm already defending him.
You're defending him. He hasn't done anything wrong. And in fact, he is one of the few offensive linemen that has not allowed a single pressure on Geno Smith.
Yes.
Um, he is still a top-rated tackle at this point. A lot of that's on the back of week one.
Mhm.
Frankly,
Mhm.
his run blocking did dip down more to what I would
Mhm.
expect. 57.7. That's not bad. That's more like what I would expect though. But if you hope that's a floor though, like you hope he can get better from that and from game to game, and maybe he's somewhere in the middle
Ain't
between week one and week two.
ain't
But just
nobody run blocking against New England. Not last week.
yeah,
The
no.
fact that he was that high is fine with me because nobody run blocking against that team. And
Well,
he's
Connor
good.
Williams did fine. Connor Williams and also Christian Haynes did
I,
fine.
I love me some
74.
Christian Haynes too.
Yeah, Christian Haynes did 74.
Mhm.
He could run block.
Mhm.
Anyway, they struggle with pass blocking, but um, I just want to shout out Cross, who I frankly just I haven't seen this level of play from him in his time. I think even if you go back and look at his college film, his college film was great from a pass blocking perspective, but just his ability to mix his run blocking to still be good to serviceable in that regard, as well as his pass blocking just being frankly elite.
Mhm.
It's an elite level pass, not allowed a single pressure when
Right.
literally everyone else around you is
Right.
allowing them left and right. I almost say that's harder to do because you have no other like it's easy to take advantage of weak points in or like you could get caught up covering for another player and
Right.
now you're in a bad spot, right? That happens all the time. But he is just staying solid. He is playing within himself. He's absolutely keeping Geno clean. Has got to worry about the other four spots.
Right.
But I mean, this is
You feel like
I really thought you were crazy with the all pro thing.
I know
Just
you
frankly,
did.
it was too big of a jump for me.
I know you did, but he look when
But
you
he's
pick a
playing that way.
tackle, when you pick a left tackle top 10, you're expecting him to be all pro at some point in time. You look at the feet, you look at the build, you look at the strength. It was all there, right? The ball of clay was all there. It was a matter of does he have the coaching and does he have the attitude right and the drive to be great? And I think last year was an eye-opening experience for him. He was very good his rookie year. He wasn't this good, but he was good.
Yeah.
And then last year he kind of fell on his face. Some of it was injuries and whatnot, but some of it was
Right.
just he wasn't committed, I don't think.
Yeah.
And this year he came back committed. He came back in shape. He came back ready to prove to the world that he was great. And I believed in his talent, right? And he just needed to show it. And the cool thing about this team is I think culturally they're bringing out the best of everybody. You don't show up and play for the Seahawks under Mike McDonald and not give 100%, or else you're not going to be on the team anymore.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of why Joe Taylor's gone. I don't think it was a
Yeah.
talent thing. I think, and he put up tons of sacks. I think it was the fact of the matter, like his attitude didn't fit. His
Yeah.
approach to the game didn't fit. And it was something that Pete Carroll was willing to put up with. And it's something Mike McDonald was not willing to put up with. You brought in a dog in Byron Murphy, right? It's you're bringing in players with certain Christian Haynes, you could say same thing, right? So I think that is part of it as well with a player like Cross who's that talented, player like Tariq Woolen, I think similar thing can apply. Uber talented, more talented than just about any corner in the league, but he had to focus, right? And he had to, I don't want to call it an attitude adjustment, but he needed something to motivate him to reach his ceiling. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. So that's part of why I'm so high on this team too.
And I think you brought up coaching for Charles Cross. I think
Mhm.
that's been very key for him too. Yes, it has been all of those things that you mentioned, but from the feedback I've heard coming out of camp, Huff really drills in on the small details. And
Mm,
that really was what Cross struggled with, just small things.
right.
And they seem to have made a wide, like a huge difference for
Mm,
him.
mm,
He is a epitome of small things making just slight hand placement here, slight adjustment with your footwork here,
right.
and boom.
He's so yeah,
Home
he's so
run.
talented. If you give someone with that much talent a little bit of instruction and they actually do it, they become great, right? I think we see that across all fields, right? Where people who are talented just need a little direction sometimes.
Yeah.
And this coaching staff, I think, has shown that they have the ability to do that. Now, do the same thing with Christian Haynes, and then we'll be in business.
Yeah.
You know.
We'd love to see, would love to have that be a development. I'm glad they're continuing to rotate him in.
Mm-hmm.
Hope Haynes continues to get more opportunities because I think again, I
Cards are
think
horrible.
well, they are horrible, but I would rather have Haynes, even if he's gonna stink in pass blocking,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather know that they can run behind him consistently. Like I'd rather have like this is what you do very well and you can do it consistently. You really struggle in this other thing, but
Mm-hmm.
like you can work around that. Geno can work around it.
Right.
And that's why I kind of prefer. And then there's still a lot of room to grow because he's a rookie.
Right.
Last underrated storyline that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have talked about this because I do think it's noteworthy, but Olu was a healthy scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Oluwatimi was a healthy scratch, and it seems to me that he has been booted from center number two to
Mm-hmm.
center number three, and Jalen Sundale was active and on the roster instead of Oluwatimi. That they given Olu every opportunity to improve, and Olu seems to just every step of the way not meet the task.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to get your thoughts. I know he's a chicken guy. What do you think about your guy?
I trust this coaching staff, is what I'll say. I He was very good at Michigan. He won the Remington Award as the best center in college football. Um, I expected that to play out. I think his lack of explosiveness
Mm-hmm.
and lack of pure athleticism, right? He's a very smart guy, but his lack of explosiveness and pure athleticism is showing that he's a borderline NFL player. And which pains me to say because I'm rooting for him, right? I want to see him succeed as a Michigan dude, as a Michigan man. I want to see him succeed, but I don't. I think that some of my evaluation at times was wishful thinking with him, and it was based on what I saw in college. And the reality is, I don't think he can hold up against NFL tackles. And if you can't do that, you can't play interior line, right? So I don't. Sundell, we'll see, but they went and got Connor Williams for a reason. He's third string right now for a reason, and I think it is what it is. If you can't, like I said, if you can't hold up, especially with those two guards on
Yeah,
either side, if you can't hold up in the middle, you shouldn't be on the field. And so I trust this coaching staff. I think in the first couple of weeks they've proven they've earned the trust of the fans um, so far. And if that's what they decide is the right thing to do, then so be it.
yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other things that stood out to you? That's what
2
that
and
boy.
0. That's what stands out.
2 and
Figure out
0.
a big win.
2-0 first in the NFC West as the 49ers do fall to the Minnesota Vikings. You got the Rams completely banged up. I just heard Cooper Kupp's going on IR. They lost their safety with a hairline fracture.
Yep.
They are going nowhere fast. And the door is
But I will
wide
say
open for
though,
the Seahawks.
boy, uh, Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. They're the truth in Arizona. They look good.
Okay, I
They look
agree with
good.
you, but I think they had a lot to do with how bad the Rams are. I
Marv is
think they're
Marv.
good.
I
I think
watched I, I watched Marv being a Michigan man. I watched Marv at Ohio State, and I'm telling you, what he did in that game is what he does. And if
Yeah, but
Kyler,
they defended it so poorly, though. I mean, I'm
there were
sure
some
they
balls
catch.
though. There were some balls that he was the only receiver on that team that could have caught him. Right? There's some balls that he catches that are not, and some instinctual stuff. Right? Like when he caught that long pass for a touchdown, the first I think it was the first one
Yeah,
where Kyler was scrambling and he kind of ran behind the corner. That's just instinct at that point. It had nothing to do with the route, and I think he has that kind of talent. All I'm saying is I think the Cardinals could be the most formidable foe of the Seahawks this year. I know I shouldn't be burying the Niners yet, but that offense looked very good. The offense looked very, very good in this last game.
yeah. I need to see it against a little bit of a formidable. That Rams team is really a dead.
A
I
dumpster
mean, they
fire.
look
It's a
like
dumpster. It's a dumpster fire right now.
yeah, it looks terrible over there. So I listen. I need a couple more games. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying Harrison Jr. isn't talented. I know that he's very talented. I also
Mm-hmm.
just feel like with him being the main threat, you do have McBride, but I just feel like they can. I feel like teams can do a much better job of at least containing him. The guy had 4 catches and he had all those yards. Anyway, it looked like a worse version of Pete Carroll's defense, but. No, seriously, those soft zones would drive me crazy.
Right.
But anyway, I think the NFC West is shaping out to be very different than people anticipated. And yes, it's still very early in the year, but seriously, the Rams look dead. And the 49ers are struggling. I think if I saw it correctly, Debo's hurt. I
Yep.
think he's expected to miss some time.
Yep.
It's not going well for the faithful as well. It's not going well for those guys.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, Seahawks need to be on lookout. I do consider this to be a bit of a low-key trap game. They need to be, take it seriously. Be careful because I think Miami can still surprise you in a ton of
Mm-hmm.
different ways with all the
Mm-hmm.
talent that they have on the offense. We looked at this as a very formidable test. I think it still could be, despite the quarterback situation that's going on over there, if you're not careful
Yep.
and if you don't play right. And we saw Mike McDonald struggle against a Miami team like
Mm-hmm.
this. So, a lot of questions for sure going into this week. But either way, regardless of the outcome of this, still feel very good about this team, what they're building, where they're going, and frankly, the state of the NFC West.
As do I.
All right, Tino, tell people where they can find you.
Tino Jr. 20, TINOJR20 is my Twitter handle. Ethos Mariners, been a little bit quiet on the Mariners front, been busy. Mariners are still in contention. You can catch me there too. Some fantasy baseball stuff once the season ends, but right now it's football all day, every day.
That's the way we love it.
That's right.
Follow the show at Ethos Seahawks for update stats, and sometimes we'll try to get some polls out there. Curious as to what your guys' thoughts are, especially going into this very interesting week 3 matchup. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. That's all. We're out. And as always,
Go Hawks.
Hawks.